That dead girl. Take one.
Hello and welcome back to Infamous Indiana. And I'm your host, That Dead Girl. Every week we will be sitting down and we will be talking about a true crime story from the state of Indiana. I do just want to say thank you to everybody who has liked or subscribed or just tuned in to watch any of my videos that I've done so far. Thank you, thank you. I wasn't sure what kind of response I would get when I started this whole thing, so I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see, a few of you actually did, tune in and watch it. So thank you very much, and I hope that you stick around and continue to hang out with me. And this week we are going to be talking about the Shanda Sharer case. I know that I'm very familiar with this case. For those of you who aren't, Shanda Sharer was a 12-year-old girl, and on January 12th, 1992, her body was found on a rural property off Lemon Road in Madison, Indiana. It is believed that Shanda was kidnapped, beaten, stabbed, sodomized, tortured for more than 7 hours, and finally burned alive. So definitely, we're going to be getting into some pretty dark stuff with this one. It's very, it's honestly almost a little hard for me to talk about. Just because I've always felt a kind of, I guess, closeness with this story, just because I have been a teenage girl and I definitely know what it feels like to be jealous of somebody or have a group of girls just bully you and all you want to do is be their friend and they just are bitches basically. So I definitely kind of relate closely to the subject matter in this story, and like I said, it's we're going to be getting into some pretty dark stuff. So if you feel like you're the type of person that can't handle things of that nature, now would be the time to turn off and go watch something else. Shanda Renee Sharer was born on June 6, 1979 in Pineville, Kentucky to parents Stephen Sharer and Jackie Vaught. Shanda's mother had been previously married and she also had an older daughter named Paige. Now, Shanda's parents, they split up early on in Shanda's life. So, Jackie eventually remarries and her and Shanda end up moving with that husband to Louisville, Kentucky. It didn't last very long, and in 1991, Shanda and her mother Jackie ended up moving to New Albany, Indiana to be closer to Shanda's father and also her older daughter Paige. Shanda was said to be, very outgoing, very smart, very beautiful. She was very athletic. She was in cheerleading, softball, basketball. I mean, you name it. She was super into her extracurricular activities. She had a lot of friends. She was super into fashion and she really loved to play with her hair and do makeup. And she would spend hours doing this and putting together outfits and things like that. It's said that she tended to befriend, kids that were kind of considered to be the underdog, and she always, made it a point to take up for her friends, and she just kind of had that caretaker role from early on. She just wanted to take care of all of her friends and everyone that was close to her. And, in researching this story and just reading everything about her and her life, you could just tell that Shanda was a person that was very, very special to basically everybody who knew her, which makes telling this story or hearing this story that much more difficult. Literally, no one ever had a bad thing to say about Shanda, and it's very sad that her life, it was so promising and it was cut short, and it's just terrible. So, like I said, Shanda and her mother end up moving back to New Albany, Indiana, to be closer to her other daughter and Shanda's father, Stephen. Upon arriving in New Albany, Jackie enrolls Shanda at Hazelwood Middle School. Okay, so Obviously, Shanda is very nervous, being the new kid in town, new kid at school, and she's just feeling very apprehensive about the whole situation, and her mother, as any good mother should, tells her everything's going to be fine. You're going to be great. You're going to make lots of new friends and everything will be, normal before you know it. So Shanda started school there, and for the first few weeks, everything was going really good. She was doing well in her classes, and she was actually starting to make a lot of new friends. One day, Jackie was at work and she received a phone call, and it happened to be the principal of Shanda's school. And he informs Jackie that Shanda had gotten into a fight with another student named Amanda Heverin. Now, mind you, Shanda has always been, almost like a goody two shoes, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. She was just a very good kid and she'd never really been in trouble for anything. So Jackie was just shocked. She's like, wow, what is really going on here? My kid, my perfect kid is in trouble at school for fighting. Like, what is this? And as I said before, Shanda had already started making new friends at her new school. And we've also talked a little bit about how Shanda befriended the underdog and always took up for her friends. So this new friend of hers is telling her about this boyfriend that she has, and the girl's saying he's very mean to her, he's controlling, and she just doesn't want to be with him anymore, but she's so afraid and she doesn't really know how to tell him that she wants to break up. So Shanda, upon hearing all of this, immediately she's like, oh my God, you're my friend. I will totally help you. I will just go tell him, that you want to break it off. So the girl gives Shanda a ring, which was a gift from the guy, I guess. And she says to Shanda, if you just give him this ring, he will know, what you mean by it. So Shanda takes the ring. She goes and finds this kid, and I guess his name is Nate, I believe. So she goes and finds Nate, and, she walks up to him and she just hands him the ring. Now, Nate, he's like, what the hell? He has no idea what's going on at first, but then it dawns on him, and then he starts to get angry. So he refuses to take the ring. So then Shanda tries to force him to take back the ring, and he refuses yet again, and they start to get loud. They're yelling in the middle of the hallway, yelling at each other, take the ring. No, I'm not going to take the ring. So kids start to crowd around, as kids do whenever there's a fight at school. I'm sure you remember from your middle school and high school days, being in that circle around the two kids who are fighting or screaming at each other. So anyway, one of those kids happens to be Amanda Heverin. Now, she doesn't like the fact that Shanda is yelling at this Nate dude because Nate is actually Amanda's cousin. So she steps in and she's like, hey, back the fuck off. That's my family. I don't know who you think you're talking to, but you need to leave him alone. So Shanda is immediately intimidated by Amanda. And she quickly tries to, squash it. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's a misunderstanding. I'm just trying to help my friend. Honey, Amanda was not having it. So, she was about that life. So she chest bumps Shanda into the lockers, drags her down by her hair. She starts punching her in her face. And this goes on for quite a while as, students start to crowd around and basically hide what's going on. Well, finally, a teacher comes and breaks it up. And the girls end up getting 2 weeks of in-school suspension. And as their relationship started, they obviously weren't too fond of one another. They had just gotten into a physical fight, but as they spent more time together in school suspension, they would actually reconcile their differences and become very good friends. So now that we've, kind of brought Amanda into the picture, I do want to take just a little bit of time to give you just a small amount of background on each of the girls that we will be talking about in these videos. I don't really want to spend too much time focused on them or talking about them, but I do feel it's important to the story to share a few things about each of them, just for the story's sake, I guess, because the story is about Shanda and their crimes, and I really don't feel like they deserve to be glorified or really spoken about in any way, but I'm going to do my best to keep it short. So, we've already mentioned Amanda Heverin. This is the girl who Shanda got into the physical altercation with at school. Amanda Heverin is 14 years old at this time, and she grew up in a single parent household with just her father, Jerry. Her mother had abandoned them very early on in her life. They were very, very poor. They lived in the poorest neighborhood in the town. Amanda had a very colorful reputation, to say the least. In a small town, early 90s, I guess people didn't really understand her style. She dressed like a boy. She wore very baggy clothes. She kept her hair cut short in a bowl cut. I'm pretty sure we all know what that is. A boyish kind of style. And people just thought it was kind of weird, I guess. And she had a lot of behavioral problems and was known to get in fights and things like that. So, well known, I guess infamous a little bit, if you want to use that word. The way she dressed, yes, did bother a lot of people, but it also bothered her own father, Jerry, quite a bit as well. And this would lead to him actually questioning her early on about her sexuality. And of course, she lies and tells him she's not gay, she actually has a boyfriend. But in reality, she was actually in an openly gay relationship with a 17-year-old girl named Melinda Lovelace. Melinda Lovelace was born in New Albany, Indiana, to parents Larry and Marjorie. Her father, Larry, was a Vietnam veteran, but was more well known for being a abusive, worthless drunk who couldn't hold down a job, basically. Um, he and her mother, Marjorie, actually had a open relationship, but actually what that meant was Larry basically let his friends borrow Marjorie for sex. So they would have sex with his wife and they would pay him money to do so. Yeah. Anyway, it was said that Melinda's father, Larry, was very abusive, especially to her mother, Marjorie. Like I said, he basically pimped her out and, he was physically abusive towards her. And allegedly, he had sexually assaulted her and beat her in front of Melinda and her sisters multiple times. It's also alleged that he sexually assaulted Melinda and her sisters as well. Larry was so abusive towards Marjorie that she would try to take her life multiple times. But by the time Melinda was 14 years old, Marjorie finally was fed up and had enough courage to leave that situation and divorce him. So, for some reason, Melinda really grew to resent her mother during this time after she divorced her father. She just, I guess, really loved her father in spite of all the abuse, and she just couldn't handle the fact that her mother, had gotten a divorce. So Melinda's home life was very tumultuous and very traumatic, to say the least, and this led to her being very depressed. She would lash out at school. She would get into fights. She self-harmed. So all these things happening to her actually ended up really affecting her academics, and she got held back a year in school. She also lived an openly gay lifestyle, which during the early 90s in conservative Indiana was not something that you would typically see every day. It was also said that she was very promiscuous and that she would sleep with men and women. And the next girl I want to talk about who's very important to this story is a girl named Lori Tackett. And during this time, she was 17 years old. Lori Tackett was born on October 5th, 1974. And from everything that I've read about Lori, it's said that she grew up in a very strict and religious household. I believe her mother was Pentecostal. And I read that actually social workers made regular unannounced visits to the house in regards to a situation where her mother had actually tried to strangle her because she found out that she had been changing into jeans when she got to school. So I'm not really sure why, but I do know a lot of the women who are Pentecostal, they wear skirts and dresses and things like that. So, needless to say, her mother was not having it, her changing into jeans at school and would abuse her. It's said that Lori and her mother fought constantly. Like I said, her mother was very religious and Lori was very much into the occult. Lori was said to be heavily interested and invested in the occult, and she also believed that she was possessed by an entity named Deanna the vampire. Yeah. Lori is actually really into self harm, and her parents find out that she's been cutting herself, and they have her hospitalized. So they put her on antidepressants, send her to a few counseling sessions, and she gets out. Only to go back 2 days later for slitting her wrists yet again. So she's detained for a little while, and I think she gets out in like March of 91, and then she goes on to drop out of high school. The next girl in our story is 15-year-old Hope Rippey. Hope was born in Madison, Indiana in 1976. There wasn't a lot that I really found about her past, but what I did find is that there was a period of time where her parents had gotten divorced and she had actually moved to Michigan with her mother and her siblings. And then years later, her parents actually reconciled, so then she moved back to New Albany, Indiana. And really, mostly what I've read about her is she was said to be very promiscuous. She was quite rebellious at times. She liked to, smoke weed, and she just really liked to hang out with the boys. Sounds to me like typical, teenage girl stuff. I don't know. Seems like the kind of stuff I was into at that age as well. So, you know. And the last girl I want to introduce in the story is Toni Lawrence, and at this time she would have been 15 years old. Same thing as with Hope, I didn't see a lot of stuff that really caught my eye about Toni Lawrence other than the fact that she was a victim of not one but two sexual assaults. The first one was when she was really young by a family member, and the second one was actually a 14-year-old boy. Nothing was really done about either one of these incidents other than they put some type of order against the 14-year-old boy, basically saying that he couldn't be around her or talk to her or anything like that. So it's said that she went into counseling for a little bit, but she never truly went through with it. And just like the other girls, it said that she was quite promiscuous. And, like I had mentioned, she also liked to self harm. And she actually tried to commit suicide in the 8th grade. So, one thing to point out with all of these girls is how similar their backgrounds all are. I mean, as far as their trauma. Most of them are from broken homes, have been sexually abused, they self harm, they're hypersexual, they're depressed. Like, it's no wonder that they all, were kind of drawn to one another and had this very short lived friendship. And I feel like their pasts kind of drew them together and sort of created the perfect storm. So now that you have just, a little bit of information about each of the girls that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to get back to the actual story now. Amanda and Shanda got into a fight. So, like I said, they had to serve, a 2-week in school suspension together. And during this time, they became friends and they started to become really, really close. Now, Melinda Lovelace and Amanda Heverin are actually in an openly gay relationship with one another. So Melinda notices that Amanda is mentioning Shanda more and more often now. Whereas before it was, oh, fucking Shanda, I hate that bitch. And now it's like, oh, Shanda, she's pretty cool. I think me and her are going to be friends. So Melinda just keeps hearing this name, Shanda, 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 over and over again, and she's becoming jealous. She has to know what's going on. And of course, what teenage girl is just going to outright ask, their crush, hey, do you like somebody else? So, of course, she goes about it the messy way, and she shows up late to school a few days in a row and gets herself in school suspension so that she can actually spy on Amanda and Shanda and see what's really going on between them. So she gets in school suspension, right? And, she's watching Amanda and Shanda interact. She sees them laughing, she sees them giggling, eye contact, the way they look at each other, they're passing notes back and forth. And this drives her absolutely insane. She is extremely jealous of Shanda, from day one. The first time she lays eyes on her, she's jealous. She confronts Amanda about Shanda, and she actually demands to see, the notes they were passing back and forth. She's like, I want to see this. What are you writing about? I need to know. So Amanda reluctantly gives her the letters, and she reads them, and she happens to see, some flirtatious comments going down between Amanda and Shanda. So at this point, she basically demands that Amanda cannot see or hang out with Shanda unless Melinda is present. I mean, that's some pretty deep shit for, some teenage girls. Like, that's pretty dark. Oh, I don't like this girl. You can't hang out with her or speak to her unless I'm there. Like, I don't know. I just don't recall being that intense about, boys or anything like that when I was that age. Okay, so bear with me. As I said, we are talking about a group of young teenage girls. So it's about to get really, really messy, guys. So a lot of back and forth. Please just try to keep up with me because it can be a lot. So Amanda and Shanda are getting along swell, They actually start hanging out after school together, and they're still secretly writing their little love notes back and forth in spite of, Melinda's threats. Now, Shanda's mother, Jackie, she doesn't necessarily approve of Amanda being friends with Shanda, but I honestly think she just understood what type of friend Shanda was and the type of person she was, so she kind of knew, Shanda was maybe taking Amanda under her wing, and I guess she was probably just happy that Shanda was making new friends in a new town. Definitely keep in mind that this whole time that Amanda is carrying on with Shanda, flirting with her, hanging out with her, writing the love notes, she's still in a relationship with Melinda Lovelace. So Amanda and Shanda are still, continuing on with their relationship behind Melinda's back. Um, and they've been getting more and more comfortable with their, PDA at school, and people were starting to talk. And obviously, Melinda wasn't stupid. She could clearly see that something more was going on here. It said that Melinda had started to notice the way Amanda would stare at Shanda, and Amanda was ignoring her phone calls and blowing her off when they were supposed to be hanging out. So she definitely knew that something was up. So one morning she plans to, talk to Amanda and ask her why, why are you blowing me off? Why are you not answering my phone calls? Like, what's going on? So she meets her at her locker, and Amanda opens her locker, and Melinda happens to see a heart-shaped piece of paper laying, at the bottom of the locker. So she bends down to pick it up, and she reads it, and it happens to say, Shanda loves Amanda. I know. So Melinda is obviously very pissed off at this point. Everything that she suspected that's been going on actually is in her mind just from seeing this piece of paper. So she keeps the paper, she stews on it all day long at school. And the more she thinks about it, the more upset she gets. So the bell rings, it's the end of the day, and she decides, you know what, I'm fucking going after this bitch. She's gonna stop flirting with my girlfriend one way or another. So she's on a mission, and she goes to find Shanda. She grabs Shanda by her hair and slams her into the locker. And she basically threatens her. She's like, "Look, bitch, if you don't leave my girlfriend alone, I'm going to have to teach you a lesson. Stay the fuck away from my girlfriend, or me and you are going to have some serious problems." She's like, "I know you wrote this letter or wrote this thing to my girlfriend." And Shanda is insistent. She's like, "I did not write that. Oh my God, that's not even my handwriting." And she's like super adamant that she didn't even write it. So obviously Shanda is like terrified. She's not a fighter. She, is intimidated. Obviously, this girl just snatched her up by her ponytail, over, a note. So like I said, she's terrified and she tells Amanda this. She's like, "Oh my God, your girlfriend's a psycho. I am just scared for my life." And Amanda assures her, "Everything's gonna be fine. I'm gonna break up with her. I know she's crazy, but I would never let her hurt you." So Shanda believes Amanda's bullshit, for one reason or another, and Amanda actually convinces Shanda to go to the school dance with her. Now, what Shanda doesn't know is that sneaky, sneaky little Amanda knows that Melinda will not be there that night because she is attending a party for a birthday of one of her friends. So yeah, she knows Melinda won't be there, so it's safe to bring her, side piece to the dance. So at this point, little Miss Amanda is basically leading on both Melinda and Shanda, and she's pitting them against each other, if you will. She's telling Melinda one thing, she's telling Shanda another thing. She's just playing them both. I truly believe, like at least in the beginning part of the story, that Amanda Heverin is the puppet master, if you will. She's controlling everything. She's planning it. She's calculated. She's basically turning these two girls against one another for her own, selfish needs and selfish reasons. And I truly believe that if Amanda Heverin wasn't in the picture and she hadn't done the things that she had done, that Shanda Sharer would probably still be alive. So Amanda and Shanda attend the dance together. So they're dancing together, they're hanging out, they're having a good time, and all is well at first. Until one of Melinda's friends actually notices that the two are there together. So she actually goes to a payphone, yes, a payphone, and calls Melinda and says, "Hey, aren't you dating Amanda Heverin? Because she's totally here with that Shanda Sharer girl and they're dancing together and you just got to get over here and see this." So, like I said, Melinda is at a friend's birthday party and she's been drinking. So she just decides it's a great idea to go to the school dance, wasted. So she gets there and she sees that Amanda and Shanda are in fact there together, basically as a couple, and obviously she's not happy about this at all. So she shows up drunk and she actually tries to fight Shanda. She shoves her, she's getting in her face, da 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 da. "I told you to stay away from my girlfriend." And, Amanda actually steps in between the two of them and keeps Melinda from attacking Shanda. So after threatening Shanda, Melinda decides she's had enough of Amanda and her bullshit, and she decides to break up with her right then and there. So Melinda and Amanda break up, like I said, after the events that occurred at the dance, and Melinda kind of falls into a depression. She's feeling sad and inadequate, like she just, wasn't good enough for Amanda, and she comes up with a plan to try and make Amanda jealous to essentially win her back. So Melinda starts dating a much older girl. And once Amanda finds out about this through the grapevine, it in fact does make her jealous. And it said that she actually made a number of threatening phone calls to this girl, threatening to kick her ass and other things if she did not immediately break up with Melinda. So Melinda finds out about this actually, and she's just over the hills. She's happy. "Oh, I knew you still cared. You're threatening my new girlfriend. You must still have feelings for me." So the two talk and they actually decide that they're just going to sit down and work out all their problems and try to work on their relationship. They both agree that they love each other very much, and Melinda decides to stop seeing the girl that she's been seeing, and Amanda actually promises to cut all ties with Shanda. Meanwhile, little Miss Amanda is telling Shanda quite a different story. She's telling Shanda, oh, we're broken up. You and I can finally be together. I love you. You're the only one for me. Everything's going to be perfect now. She also tells Shanda, even though they can be together now, they need to keep their relationship a secret because she's fearful of what Melinda may do if she finds out about them. Yeah. And at this point in time in Shanda's life, her mom is growing quite concerned. Shanda is not doing so well in school. Her behavior has just changed. She's dressing differently. She seems very moody. She spends all of her time alone in her room with the door shut, typical angsty teenage girl stuff, I guess. And she just notices all these red flags, and she knows that something's really going on with her daughter. One weekend, while Shanda is away at her father's house, they had, joint custody. So on the weekends, Shanda would go and spend the weekend with her stepfather and her stepmother. So one weekend, while she's away at her father's, her mother, Jackie, actually finds a letter in her mailbox. Now, this letter is addressed to Amanda, and when she reads it, it's very, we'll say, sexually explicit. Now, mind you, it's from Shanda to Amanda. And just a few weeks prior to this, Shanda had stayed all night at Amanda's house. So, upon reading this note or letter, Jackie suspects that the two had slept together. Just from what she's read, that's her impression. So she immediately calls Shanda's father, and she's freaking out, obviously. She's like, our daughter is out of control. I don't know what to do. I found this letter. And Shanda can actually overhear her father and stepmother, having this conversation. And I can imagine just dying inside. Like, oh my God, I didn't, want anyone to know about my personal business, and now they're talking about it. So she quickly tries to run and do some damage control. She's very adamant that the note was just meant to be as a joke between two friends. And she sticks to her story, but the parentals, they're just not believing it. They're not having it. So Jackie, being a concerned mother, tells Steven, you need to bring Shanda home right away. We have to have, a serious talk. And clearly, Jackie's very upset, upon the discovery of this letter and, what the letter says. So she confronts Shanda about Amanda because she basically blames Shanda's friendship with Amanda for her, behavior and the decline in her schoolwork. So they're, arguing, they're having this altercation, and Shanda finally breaks down in tears and basically screams at her mother, look, I need Amanda. Amanda protects me. There are girls at school that want to seriously hurt me. They're jealous of me. I don't know what to do, and Amanda is my only friend, and like I said, she will protect her. So Jackie's like, well, this is the first I'm hearing of this. Who dislikes you so much that they're threatening you and bullying you. And she actually tells her all about Melinda Lovelace and the entire situation. One thing to note is Shanda and her mother are basically best friends. It's said that their relationship was more like two roommates, or like I said, two best friends rather than a mother and a daughter. So they tell each other everything. It's then that Jackie tells Shanda, we can transfer your school. We can move, you can have a fresh start. You can forget all about Amanda. You can forget about these girls, and you can forget, that any of these horrible things ever happened. So Shanda and her mother come to the agreement and they decide to transfer her school, and she is going to, in fact, have a fresh start. Jackie and Stephen end up transferring Shanda to a Catholic girls' school called Our Lady of Perpetual Help. So immediately, Shanda is thriving at her new school, being away from Amanda, being away from the drama of Melinda and just that whole thing. She immediately joins the basketball team. It said that she was already making friends and that she was even dating a boy during this time. Now, Shanda is enjoying her happiness and she hasn't really broken up with Amanda, but she also hasn't really spoken to her either. And Amanda, she can't have that. She just can't stand the fact that Shanda is moving on with her life. So Amanda actually begins harassing Shanda and calling her house, and she would use different accents or even have other girls three-way call Shanda just to be able to get through and trick Shanda's mom into letting her talk to her. So basically, at this point, she's stalking Shanda and she's become super duper obsessed with her. And it's just really creepy. Shanda even tells a close friend of hers in a note that she just wishes Amanda would leave her alone forever and that she would stop calling her. So somehow, through all the phone calls, Amanda eventually gets through and speaks to Shanda. Her and her manipulative ways, she actually convinces Shanda to lie to her parents and convinces her to go to yet another school dance with her. So basically, Shanda has a cousin who still attends Hazelwood, and she's going to use that as her cover story. She's going to go to the dance with her cousin, and she's not going to have anything to do with Amanda or any of those other girls. But what Shanda doesn't know is that Melinda actually knows that she will be at the dance, and she has some plans of her own. So Shanda and her cousin arrive at the dance, and they're walking up, they're going through the parking lot, and who do they see standing outside waiting for them? Melinda and Amanda. So clearly, we know about Melinda that she's very volatile and she has quite a temper. So she immediately starts yelling at Shanda, pushing her. She even slaps Amanda in the face. She grabs Amanda by the hair and gets her down on her knees and basically forces her to berate Shanda and tell her she hates her, tell her she's ugly, and tell her that she never wants to see or speak to her ever again. So I don't necessarily know what Shanda expected to happen during this meeting, but I honestly don't believe she expected anything like this to happen. I truly believe she probably just wanted to see Amanda one last time to, get some type of closure or maybe even say goodbye. So, this is the second time, the second dance that has been ruined for Shanda. She's crying with her cousin in the parking lot. She's completely devastated. She's, heartbroken. She's been humiliated yet again. And I do believe it's at this point in time where, Melinda actually starts to snap. She finally realizes that it doesn't matter whether or not Shanda goes to the same school as Amanda. Amanda is always going to long for her, basically. And Melinda's had enough, basically, and she just wants Shanda gone. On November 26th, she writes Amanda a letter and she says, I feel like I need to cry. I'm so mad at you. I just want Shanda dead. Amanda's father, Jerry, actually ends up finding out about the relationship that's been going on between Amanda and Melinda. He actually goes to the police because of their difference in age. Amanda's 14 and Melinda's 17. So he goes to Melinda with this information and he basically gives her an ultimatum and he tells her, if you don't stay away from my daughter, I am going to have you arrested. So, Melinda could blame Jerry. She could blame the world for not accepting her relationship. She could blame anybody she wants. But who does she actually blame for all of these things happening to her? Shanda. She blames Shanda for her losing Amanda. She blames Shanda for just everything that goes wrong in her life. I mean, her hatred for this poor girl is that deep that she truly believes everything bad that happens to her is Shanda's fault. Melinda begins to tell several people and close friends at school that she needs to take care of Shanda, that she's going to teach her a lesson, that she wants her dead. She even starts asking around, asking random people and talking about different ways to dispose of a dead body. So I know, like I said, with this being a group of teenage girls, we've gone, a little back and forth, and there's been a lot of cat fighting and a lot of, gossip and things like that. But it is very essential to the story to know kind of where all this hatred for Shanda began. And, I still don't understand it. I think it's very petty. I think it's stupid, among other things. But like I said, it was just important to touch on those things because this wasn't a choice that just happened overnight. This is something that was built up over time. It was premeditated, and Melinda Lovelace may not have carried out this crime alone by herself, but with the help of these other girls, I feel like that's what it took to push her over that edge. So we're going to fast forward a little bit to January 11th, 1992. Melinda Lovelace and Lori Tackett had actually met through some mutual friends at a house party in Louisville, Kentucky. It's said that Lori was very enamored with Melinda. She had like a huge crush on her, and she was basically kind of like obsessed with her, if you will. So when Melinda was asked about her friendship with Lori or why she became friends with her, she basically just said, Lori's off her fucking rocker. And that's why she was friends with her, basically because she was crazy. And I do feel like Melinda definitely manipulated Lori. She knew how Lori felt about her, and she knew that Lori would really do anything that she asked her to do. So anyway, January 11th, 1992. Melinda Lovelace and Lori Tackett have planned to go to a punk rock show at A1 Skate Park in Louisville. Lori actually ends up inviting two of her other friends, Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence. She had known Hope Rippey since, grade school, and Tony Lawrence was actually a really close friend of Hope Rippey. So little do Hope and Tony know that Melinda and Lori had already been plotting and scheming about what they were going to do to Shanda. So they plan to go to this concert, and the girls all meet back at Melinda's house, and they decide they're all going to get ready together. Now, do keep in mind that none of these girls know Shanda. They've never even met her. The only person that has even met her is Melinda Lovelace. So Melinda, I feel, definitely used these girls' anonymity to her advantage. So before they head out to the concert, Melinda tells Hope and Tony and Lori that she knows Shanda stays with her father on the weekends and that she actually has the address to the house where Shanda's staying. She tells them that it's on the way to the concert and that they should totally stop by and, carry out her plan. She tells Hope and Tony that she's going to need them to basically lure Shanda out of the house. Because if she goes to the door, Shanda's going to see her and Shanda's going to be scared and she's not going to go for it. So they discuss the plan a little further and they decide, that, like I said, Hope and Tony are going to go to the door and they're going to try to lure Shanda out of her house. And from there, they're going to kidnap her and take her to some location and teach her a lesson. So Hope and Tony go up and they knock on Shanda's door, and Shanda actually answers the door. And Hope, not knowing what Shanda looks like or anything, says, "Is Shanda here?" So Shanda's like looking at her like, "Yeah, hi, I'm Shanda. Who are you?" So Hope introduces herself as Hope, and Tony introduces herself as Stacy for whatever reason. Maybe she just didn't want to give Shanda her real name. And they tell Shanda that they are friends with Amanda Heverin, and that Amanda is waiting for her at this place and she has something really important that she needs to tell Shanda immediately. So they ask her, hey, come with us. You've got to go. You got to see Amanda. She really needs to talk to you. Well, Shanda tells them, unfortunately, no, I can't. I'm planning on going to my friend's birthday party tonight. I'm actually, getting ready to go there right now. But if you come back later, she says, I may be able to sneak out. She also tells them that they needed to have Amanda with them when they returned. Now, maybe she was feeling kind of suspicious of them, seeing as how she didn't know either one of them, and they seemed to know quite a bit about her. But she did, ask them to bring Amanda back with them. So the girls go back to the car, empty handed without Shanda, and obviously Melinda does not like this at all, and she's just enraged. She's cussing them out, typical Melinda fashion, screaming at the top of her lungs. And the girls assure her, okay, Melinda, it's fine. She totally fell for it. Why don't we just go to the concert? And when we're done there, we can come back and she's going to come with us. We know, she totally fell for our story. So Melinda reluctantly agrees and they continue on to the concert. So they get to the skate park and they all go inside. And like I said, it's a punk band. It's very loud, very smoky. It's very hot, and Tony and Hope at one point decide that it's too much for them, so they ask Lori for the car keys so that they can go outside and get some air. Now, on their way outside, they happen to run into two boys that they know from school. So the boys end up going back to the car with them, and they're hanging out, and it's said that they actually had sex with these two boys. So after they, do their business and whatnot, these boys are asking Hope and Tony, hey, what are you getting into, after the concert's over? And they're like, oh, we're just going to go with our friend Melinda and Lori, and we're just going to beat this girl up and we're going to kidnap her, just she felt really compelled and really comfortable to tell these strangers, all about their plan. And these guys are just like, yeah, whatever, you're not really going to do that. And that's when Hope pulls out the kitchen knife from Melinda's bag and kind of waves it at them. So naturally, these dudes are like, what the fuck? You got to be kidding me. You're really not planning on doing this, are you? And it was said that Hope became pretty defensive and, got an attitude with them, saying, we're doing this. She hurt our friend. There's nothing you can say to stop us. So these guys are like, this is really bad. You should not be participating in this. You should leave right now. And in fact, the boys actually offered them an out. They told Hope and Tony, if you get in the car with us right now, we will take you wherever you want to go. We will take you right out of this situation. Hope and Tony both declined, which in my mind, that tells me they were already aware of the plan. They were already aware of what was going to happen. They had a chance to say no and to get out of it, and they refused and are still going along with it anyway. Lori and Melinda return to the car and they decide, it's time to hit the road. It's time to go back to Shanda's house. They arrive back at Shanda's house around 12:30, and this time Tony actually refuses to get out of the car and go with Hope to retrieve Shanda. She says, oh, it's too cold, I don't want to get out of the car, I'm not going. So Hope gets out of the car and she actually goes to retrieve Shanda herself. So she walks up to the house and she's actually surprised to find that Shanda is already waiting outside. So Hope approaches Shanda and the first thing out of Shanda's mouth is, where's Amanda? And Hope just makes up a story. She's like, oh, well, she's waiting for you. I've already told you at this really cool place, and we just really need you to come with us. She's got to talk to you. It's so important. Blah, blah, blah. So while Hope is distracting Shanda and talking to her, Melinda is actually preparing to hide in the back floorboard of the car. So Melinda's hiding and Lori is covering her up with a blanket and, like random trash from the back seat. So for whatever reason, Shanda is believing everything that this Hope girl is telling her, even though she doesn't, know who she is. She wants to see Amanda, so she follows her back to the car. She ends up getting in the front seat with Hope and Tony, and Lori is in the back seat. And mind you, Melinda is hiding under the blanket in the floorboard. So the girls begin to drive, and Hope is kind of just chit chatting with Shanda, and she starts asking her questions about Amanda. She's like, "Oh, is Amanda your girlfriend?" And Shanda says, "Yes." She's like, "Oh, well, how long have you been together?" And Shanda tells her. She's like, "But doesn't she have a girlfriend named Melinda?" And Shanda tells her, "Yeah, but they broke up. I don't think, Amanda loves her. Amanda loves me. You know, keep in mind, Melinda is listening in the backseat to all of this the entire time, and Shanda has absolutely no idea, and she's answering all these questions very truthfully. So they're driving, and Hope continues on, interrogating Shanda, asking her all these different questions about Amanda. And at some point, Melinda is tired of all the shit that she's hearing, so she jumps up from the back seat and puts a knife to Shanda's throat. Now, obviously, Shanda is terrified. She's screaming. She's crying. She's begging Melinda not to hurt her. And Melinda has just fully lost it. She's gone psychotic. She's screaming. She's howling. She's, cussing Shanda out, pulling her hair, holding the knife close to her throat, threatening to slit her throat, just basically kind of torturing her. And she ends up asking Shanda, you know, did you sleep with Amanda? And Shanda tells her yes. And obviously, this is not what Melinda wanted to hear at all. At this point, that's when it gets really bad, and all of the girls join in. They're just taunting Shanda, saying things to try to scare her, threatening to kill her, telling her they're going to teach her a lesson. And this continues all the way to Utica, Indiana, which is where Mistletoe Falls is located, or I guess it's better known to most people in Indiana as the Witch's Castle. The Witch's Castle is the remains of an old mansion, basically. So the townspeople actually believe that it was owned by a coven of witches, and the townspeople actually burned it down to basically rid themselves in their town of these witches. So there's lots of stories out there, lots of legends. It's haunted. The witches' bodies are still there. It's a cursed place, blah, blah, blah. So this is where they decide that they're going to take Shanda. So they get there, and the girls drag Shanda out of the car, and they bind her hands together and bind her feet together. And they actually end up dragging her to a part of the property called the dungeon. So meanwhile, they're taunting her, screaming at her, kicking her, punching her, just being as mean as they can possibly be to this poor girl. It said that at this time, once they got her into the dungeon, that's when Melinda began to take Shanda's jewelry. And she took all of her rings off of her, and she gave one to each girl. And then it said that Hope Rippey actually stole Shanda's Mickey Mouse watch, and she put it on her wrist, and she's playing the music, and she's like, "Oh wow, I really love this song," and she's dancing around to this music on this poor girl's Mickey Mouse watch. Like, I can't even imagine like the fear, this poor girl felt. She's surrounded by these crazy girls, she's in the middle of nowhere. She has no idea where she is. She's far from home, like, and they're basically torturing her. So Melinda's, waving the knife in Shanda's face, and all the girls are calling her names and threatening to cut her hair and saying things like, "Oh, bitch, I bet you wouldn't be so pretty if I cut all your fucking hair off," and, things like that. They're just being terrible to her. So Lori decides she wants to kick it up a notch, and she actually goes to her car to retrieve a t-shirt. She wraps the t-shirt around a stick and she lights it ablaze. Almost like a torch. So she's waving this torch in Shanda's face and she is threatening her. So she's waving it in Shanda's face, threatening to burn her with it. And she tells her, "This place is full of dead people and soon you'll be joining them." And I think that is a good stopping point for the first video. I'm thinking that this story is probably going to need at least 2 or 3 videos because there's a lot. Like, I feel like I barely scratched the surface tonight with all that I've talked about. So sorry if my demeanor is a little low as I'm talking about this. It's very disturbing, honestly, even for me. And I have a pretty strong stomach, and things like this normally don't freak me out or make me feel some type of way, I guess. But for some reason, this case is it's different. Maybe because Shanda was so young and just the brutality of it all. And we're really going to be getting into all of that in the next video. I'm kind of not looking forward to it, to be honest with you, because it's a lot of terrible, horrible, just sickening things that they did to her. And yeah, it's a lot. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope to have part 2 up within the next 2 weeks. Right now, I'm looking more towards a bi-weekly schedule for my videos. That gives me time to, work on my research and get everything together and film and edit and all that stuff. So look for the videos bi-weekly. I will have part 2 of this story up for you very soon. Remember to stay spooky, keep it creepy, and if you're from Indiana, watch your back because it's a pretty fucking crazy world out there.